I'd like to call to order the April 6, 2015 City Council workshop on the Alligator Creek access to Charlotte Harbor, aka Bird Section Cut-Through. Please let the record reflect that all council members and our city manager are present. If you have not already done so, we would appreciate you turning off your cell phones. And there are many seats up front, right in the front 2 rows. So if you need a seat, please come forward. I'd like for us all now to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Good evening. I'm Carolyn Freeland, and I am so pleased and honored to serve as your mayor this year. I would like each of our council members to introduce themselves. Nancy?
Good evening. It's great to see all of you here. I'm Nancy Prafke. I represent District 5, which is the south part of Punta Gorda, and it's my honor and privilege to serve all of you.
Hello, my name is Kim Devine, and I'm serving as vice mayor this year, and I serve all of you, but I'm from District 1.
Good evening. My pleasure to be here this evening, and I represent District 4. My name is Tom Cavanagh.
Hi, good evening. Rachel Kiesling. I was the mayor last year. I'm council member from District number 2, which is like Henry Street Dog Park area.
Thank you. And our city manager is hanging in over there. Okay, very good. Again, I want to welcome you all. It is wonderful to see you here. It's obviously a topic of interest to many of us. As you can see behind me, we have our agenda identified. We'll begin with a history of Alligator Creek access to Charlotte Harbor, which our city manager will present, Howard Koenig. We will then have a presentation by Hans Wilson of Hans Wilson and Associates on the proposed Alligator Creek cut-through to Charlotte Harbor. Then our city manager will identify lots in the affected areas of Punta Gorda in Charlotte County. And at that time, then we'll also have an opportunity for any of you who wish to speak to come up and provide citizen input. When you do that, and we'll remind you again, but we will ask you to form a single line at either microphone. There's one here and on either side. All speakers must sign in. And again, we want that so we know how to spell your name for the record. You state your full name and whether you are here on behalf of an organization. We will be limiting comments to 3 minutes. You don't have to use your 3 minutes. If you agree with a previous speaker and you just want your name on the record, you can do that and come forward and say so. But again, we will be timing for 3 minutes in case each and every one of you wishes to take 3 minutes. So. I understand there's some people from Michigan that may be leaving at
Wisconsin.
Oh, I'm sorry, Wisconsin.
I'm from Michigan.
Bad.
My husband's from Wisconsin.
All right, we will now begin. And Howard, if you don't mind, presenting our history.
This mic is a little large for me. Howard Koenig, city manager. How many of you were at the Isles Yacht Club? Okay. I'll do a brief chronology since most of you were at the Isles Yacht Club. The cut-through has been a topic in the city for over 10 years. This is not new. A number of city boards and committees have discussed this potential project throughout the years. Committees such as the Waterfront Development Advisory Committee, the Revitalization Committee, the Punta Gorda Isles and Burnstone Isles Canal Advisory Committees, and as recently as the 1% Local Option Sales Tax Committee, which was made up of representatives from all of the city's neighborhoods. At some point in time over the past 10 years, representatives who sat on these boards and committees have discussed this project in one form or another. The project was included in the Punta Gorda Waterfront Development Master Plan put together by the Waterfront Development Advisory Committee. That was several years ago. The project was included in the Team Punta Gorda Citizens Master Plan. Oh, about 5 years ago, the project rationale, location, benefits, scope of work, cost estimates were presented by the Team Punta Gorda Waterfront Committee. And this project has been included in and out of the city's strategic plan periodically throughout the past 10 years. But it wasn't until March 3rd of this year at the Isles Yacht Club that the question of who pays and what is a conceivable game plan for making such a project a reality finally got addressed. Throughout all those other years, that basic question, or questions, never got addressed. City Council, past city councils, current city council, a lot of members have changed over the last 10 years, but one thing has remained the same, and that's the mantra. And that is, to the groups who are proposing the project, address who pays, come up with an overall game plan, as well as a more defined cost estimate. And then we need to determine whether the people in that affected area are going to want to pay for this project through an assessment or not. So, with that background, let me turn it over to Hans Wilson from Hans Wilson and Associates, who will give you a brief overview of the project. Again, most of you have already seen this because you've been at the Isles Yacht Club.
Thank you, Howard.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Hans Wilson. I'm a licensed professional engineer, and I've been doing waterfront facilities in Southwest Florida for over 30 years. I have suffered many a wound from battling with the permitting agencies and spent many an hour in the water looking at these kinds of sites, so I'm used to doing this kind of work. The Punta Gorda Boaters Alliance asked me to take a look at what options were available to us to try and make this connection, and of course my first questions to them were why? Why are we doing this? What are the purposes? And then, of course, the job was to narrow this down. So let's get to where we are. I've got this little pointer up here. Purpose for this project was talked about, and one of them was to improve access to Charlotte Harbor. That was one of the main ones. And, of course, with that came a decreased travel time to Ponce Inlet. There's a significant travel time for most boaters if you're way up in the interior waterways to try and get out to the open waters of Charlotte Harbor. The value of a second entry point to Punta Gorda Isles was discussed. Significant value, particularly if the main entrance is blocked for whatever reason. And of course, weather and safe harbor considerations. I mean, any of you that spend any time boating in this area know how quickly our weather can change. And that front that comes in, it doesn't come in nice and slow sometimes, and sometimes comes in very fast. It can make the difference getting to safe harbor if you're trying to get up to Ponce versus tucking in through Alligator Creek. Of course, a better boating experience, less time in the canals. Of course, some people like to travel around the canals and look at the other houses and the other boats, but most people typically want to get out and go sailing or go fishing or get away from the urban environment. Of course, improved access for listed species to the interior canal system. Now we've got 2 entry locations for critters like manatees and small tooth sawfish to get in to the canal system. Improved tidal exchange, although the reality is that where this proposed channel cut is located, there already is a tidal connection. There's already fairly significant water exchange taking place into this portion of the canal system. And then, of course, the idea of improved property values by decreasing the time it takes to get from your home to the open waters of Charlotte Harbor. Therefore, there's a sense that that's going to improve the value of actually living there, and hence the value of property. This is a map that you're probably familiar with. This is the area that we're talking about. Right here is the project location. I've done a number of projects in this area. The most recent one was up in this area up here. It takes, from the most distant location, about 2.5 miles or 72 minutes to get from this person's home all the way around, down, back up the Ruined Perimeter Canal, and out Ponce Inlet. That's a pretty significant travel time. The other thing I want to point out is looking at what we call the halfway point between the exit to Charlotte Harbor with Ponce Inlet up here and Alligator Creek down here. This location right here is important to keep in mind as we're looking about traveling and who's being involved or paying for this project. Next slide, please. This is a overall site plan, kind of gives you an idea of where we're talking about making the tidal connection, and I'll get into some detail as to why that location. Next slide, please. This is a composite of the proposed plan that we have arrived at. And keep in mind, this plan is an iteration of actually quite a few different alternatives that we've looked at. This plan is also a significant reduction from some of the plans that have been proposed over the past years. We're looking at essentially a 50-foot wide box cut channel right along the east side of this piece of property that's owned by Mr. Bucky McQueen, and creating this box cut using a perched shelf seawall so we minimize the amount of impact to mangroves. We're looking at redredging this area that has already been dredged once by Charlotte County. So we're kind of following the footsteps of already some areas that have been impacted in terms of resources. Channel depth we're proposing is to -5 feet, mean low water, or the controlling depth in Alligator Creek if Charlotte County is successful in getting their permits modified to -6 feet. We're also looking at the 50-foot channel width. That is what I feel is something that I can actually get permitted with the agencies. It makes sense for the size vessels. If you go and look into some of the design criteria for channels, you're going to find it probably recommends it be larger than that. But we also have a significant mangrove fringe right in this area, all these mangroves that would be potentially impacted. We did look at an alternative alignment. One of the alignments we looked at was actually taking advantage of this portion of this excavated canal that was to the east. However, it put us in Charlotte County. So we had a shared project within Charlotte County and within the city of Punta Gorda. It also would have been on this gentleman's property. So we would have had to seek compliance or consent from them. Kind of put the project too close. So I felt it was important to stay within one jurisdiction if possible. We also talked about a channel alignment coming straight down on this side. And in fact, one of the Team Punta Gorda proposals was a channel that was 80 foot wide, would have a significant impact to mangroves. So trying to find that balance of what boats, what size boats, what's the access like, what are the impacts to the neighbors, what are my permitting issues. It's quite a balancing act, trying to get something that we think is going to work. Of course, the dredged material will be spoiled on this location and trucked off-site. There's obviously some additional design refinements that are going to be required to address erosion, shoaling, water quality impacts, and of course, aesthetic concerns. We've got an ebb dominant system here with Alligator Creek. We've got a shoal system in this area. But we've also dredged this before, so we're trying not to reinvent the wheel. Next slide, please. This is our state regulatory permitting process. We're going to have to apply for what's called an environmental resource permit. And that application gets reviewed both at the state and the federal level. The agencies that we have to deal with at the state level is principally the Department of Environmental Protection. And within the Department of Environmental Protection, we have to deal with issues regarding water quality impacts, flushing, resource impacts, and of course being in outstanding Florida waters, which changes the classifications in terms of water quality standards. We also have the Division of Historical Archives. In case we find any Indian canoes, there's going to be some archaeological resource assessments done. I don't believe we've got any shell mounds or middens in that area. We're also going to be dealing with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the FWC. They're in the process right now of working with Charlotte County on developing a countywide manatee protection plan. That is going to be a question that's going to come up that we're going to have to get through and address is, will this alternative channel alignment have an impact on manatees? That's a big concern, one we have to be able to address to their satisfaction, because they, as a commenting agency, will provide a letter to the Department of Environmental Protection recommending approval or denial of the project. We also have, under the Department of Environmental Protection, the use of sovereign submerged lands within Alligator Creek. Public lands or sovereign lands are administered by the Department of Environmental Protection at the direction of the trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund. And that basically is the governor and cabinet sitting as the trustees. So anything that we do on those sovereign submerged lands, which are in an aquatic preserve, are going to have to be clearly in the public interest, or at least clearly enough in the public interest to satisfy the governor and cabinet that they would issue an approval for this particular project. This is a key point why it's important that the applicant be of a regulatory nature, hopefully being the city of Punta Gorda or Charlotte County, because as a public channel, it qualifies for consent of use. If this were a private channel, you would actually have to secure a submerged easement from the state and pay fees to the state for the use of that area. And then, of course, the critical component of that is the Coastal and Aquatic Managed Areas, CAMA, and those are the folks that are your stewards of the Charlotte Harbor Aquatic Preserve. They're the ones who administer the management plan for Charlotte Harbor. And they're the ones who have the requirements that need to be met to show that your project is clearly in the public interest. Next slide, please. Let's talk about the federal permitting. That same environmental resource permit application that we submit to the DEP also has to go to the Army Corps of Engineers. They're the regulatory authority under Section 404 and Section 10 of the Rivers and Harbors Act. But before the Army Corps of Engineers will issue a federal permit, they have to go out to a number of commenting agencies. At the federal level, they deal with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the FWS. Again, on manatee issues. Will this have an impact on manatees? Will this have an impact on manatee habitat? We have to satisfy the FWS that this project will have no effect, or preferably may affect, not likely to adversely affect. That's specific language that goes in the Endangered Species Act. We also have to deal with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administrations Group, National Marine Fisheries Service. We've got two divisions. We've got the Protected Resource Division, which addresses direct impacts to small-tooth sawfish. I don't know if anybody here, actually, let me ask a question. Raise your hand if you've actually seen a small-tooth sawfish. Okay, we got about a dozen people. That gives you an idea of how rare this critter is and why it's endangered. We're also having to deal with the fact that how does this project affect that habitat? It's going to be the greatest challenge we're going to have, because this project is in small-tooth sawfish habitat, less than 3 feet mean lower low water, red mangrove shoreline. So we're going to have to convince National Marine Fisheries Service, or NMFS as we like to call them, that this project is not going to have a negative impact on the small-tooth sawfish. At the same time, we also have to deal with the Habitat Conservation Division, which they'll also be looking at it in terms of what are the impacts to essential fish habitat. A lot of the mitigation that we've created actually would provide a greater range, and I say range, it's basically a greater area of access for sawfish around that red mangrove habitat that they like. However, the challenge with National Marine Fisheries Service is they don't recognize created habitat. They only look at habitat that gets negatively impacted. And of course, we've got outside commenting agencies, organizations like Save the Manatee Club, the Sierra Club, the Conservancy, you name it. Those are the folks that are going to be concerned about impacts to mangroves, mangrove habitat, the birds that use them, those types of environmental concerns. Next slide, please. On local or regulatory issues, of course, we've got Chapter 26 of the City of Punta Gorda's Land Development Regulations, trying to make this project fit into their land development code. We believe it will qualify as a recreational facility. However, if the City of Punta Gorda elects to proceed as the applicant, they also have the latitude of working within their own rule structures to make this project fit. We also have to deal with Charlotte County. We'll require some coordination with the Alligator Creek Waterway Maintenance Unit, which was established in 1987, and that's relative to the cost share on maintenance on downstream portions of Alligator Creek. So in other words, we're now introducing additional boats into a waterway that's already being managed by a known group of individuals that we will have to talk about how we're going to share the use of that. For those that are already using it, sharing that use should reduce your cost, but that also increases potential boat traffic. And then, of course, we talk about establishment of a special assessment unit, and that will be the way that local government can assess properties within the affected area. Next slide, please. This is a sense of what type of mitigation of public interest we're going to be challenged with in order to get this project permitted. We're going to have this direct impact of the channel right here. So we've got almost a quarter of an acre of mangroves that we're going to have to be eliminated. We've also got an upland area here, and in fact, this is a fill area that runs all the way down that was created out of the artificial construction of this basin that is all upland, basically covered with Brazilian pepper. Things that we're going to be doing, we're going to be looking at backfilling this artificial canal, which was basically what we call mosquito ditch, and getting that back up to an elevation to mitigate for the mangroves that are lost as a function of this excavation here. And this is the area that we're talking about excavating down, taking the Brazilian pepper out, taking it down to an elevation that red mangroves or mangroves can establish. And this is what I was talking about in terms of creating habitat, because once we open that up, now we've got an area where small-tooth sawfish can get back up into this area, access through. It creates greater shoreline for red mangroves to drop their detrital material and flush it into Alligator Creek and this little waterway in here. So we'll have to be looking at options to satisfy the agencies that the project will have a net benefit. And that's really what it comes down to, is cost-to-benefit relationships. Let's see here. And the deed parcel to the state, excluding the connecting waterway or place under conservation easement, which means that the balance of the property that would remain unaffected, we would also talk about deeding that as conservation easement area, and that's about 4.25 acres. So we try to create a package that we can present to the regulatory authorities to say, here's our benefits, costs. We want to be ahead of the game on the benefits, and then if they agree, then they'll issue the permit. Next slide. This was the opinion of probable construction cost that we put together, and this took into a couple of different features. I have done a lot of projects. So we've got some pretty fresh construction costs. We know pretty well what our construction costs are to do the actual work, but still went ahead and vetted that with a number of marine contractors and said, look, here's a project that we're looking at. Do these numbers look reasonable to you? And the response I got back was yes. We took a look at mobilization. Basically, we looked at cubic yardage, this whole menu of activities. That's basically the construction estimate. And then we added to that the mitigation costs, of which were almost $393,000 just in mitigation alone. And then we also have the cost of doing the engineering and permitting, construction administration, making sure the contractor builds what they're supposed to, a WAG at application fees, because we don't know what the final design is going to be just yet, but we're pretty close. And then special assessment administration, we know there's going to be a fee associated with administering the distribution of the cost share throughout the community. And then, of course, we got land acquisition costs. Before we can do anything, we actually have to have control over the land that we're proposing to do this work. So with that, we came down to about $1.398 million. I just rounded up to 1.5, so we had a good order of magnitude to work from. I think this is a reasonable cost estimate. I think that the project is something that actually has the chance of being permitted with the agencies. And that's what this really comes down to, is the balancing act. Some people certainly want a bigger channel, wider channel, bigger boats, deeper draft boats. But I know the agencies are going to push back on that. They're going to say, no, no, no. What are the boat sizes in your community there? And we've looked at that. We've actually gifted with some excellent work from Sea Grant and the University of Florida in terms of mapping the waterways in Charlotte County and identifying the vessel sizes and the drafts and those that are restricted and those that are not. Next slide. Getting back to that halfway point, if you remember, I said, remember this little spot right here that was halfway between the DeSoto Inlet and Alligator Creek Inlet? That was what I used as a point to establish who the benefiting properties were. And we looked at these properties, and in fact, I've gone in and spent some time, as has my associates in Hans Wilson, and we've counted all of the properties. And we did it in a very basic methodology. If it was a lot, it was one. Didn't count whether it might be multifamily condominium with potentially 4 units on that one lot. Didn't count whether it was commercial versus residential. Didn't look at it, distinguish between multifamily and single family. Basically, it is a unit. So when we counted up those units, we came up with a way of saying there's 1,556 plus or minus parcels that would benefit by having a shorter travel time to get out through this connecting cut right here into Alligator Creek versus those parcels that would go all the way up to Ponce de Leon Inlet. The person who lives right there is going to have to flip a coin, probably deciding where they want to go fishing to the north or fishing to the south. Next slide. The City of Punta Gorda is applicant, which is my recommendation to Punta Gorda Boaters Alliance. The City of Punta Gorda is in the best position to be the applicant for this project for a couple of reasons. One of them is that the regulatory agencies generally receive an application from a governing entity much more warmly than they do from the private sector, and that's just a reality. The other item that I mentioned before is that as a public entity, this becomes a public channel. This qualifies for a letter of consent under Chapter 1821.005 of the Florida Administrative Code. Those are the 2 codes we look at. That one governs regulatory uses of sovereign land. 18.20, Florida Administrative Code, deals with aquatic preserves. We'll be dabbling in both of those rules in order to get this project through the permitting process. We also have more latitude in addressing public interest. A private entity has a limited or a finite number of resources available to it. The city may have projects that are in their works that all of a sudden they can count towards public interest to satisfy the state agencies. So while we may not, as a private entity, have the ability to consider the restoration of a artificially impacted area with Brazilian pepper and that type of stuff, the city, as a function of perhaps creating some recreational amenities, may be able to go in and excavate that down and plant that with mangroves and count that towards the public interest for the particular project. So there's big benefit there. And of course, the city has the organization that's set up to manage and allocate the cost to the benefiting properties. And that's really one of the most important things, typically done through your property appraiser. And then, of course, we have a better standing to secure some support from Charlotte County and the West Coast Inland Navigational District, including applications for grant funds. Boating infrastructure grant funds are out there, but they're limited to local governments to be able to apply for those. As a private entity, you really can't do it, but as a local government, you can. So in summary, our preliminary order of magnitude estimate was $1.5 million. We divided it over the approximate 1,556 parcels, came in at just under $1,000 per parcel. Obviously, if those parcels have more units on that footprint, then there's more people to share the cost per parcel comes down. We'll need the support of the benefiting property owners, obviously. And the City of Punta Gorda and Charlotte County will need to be advocates for the projects and supporters of the boating lifestyle. That's really what this is all about. This is the unique signature that your community has. Basically, Punta Gorda Isles and Punta Gorda in general is really being seen and understood and appreciated for its boating and community and its boating aspects. I think that's the signature that needs to be considered. Permitting will be a challenge. I will not deny that. The project will have to be clearly in the public interest relative to the impacts to Alligator Creek, including satisfying the MSBU folks that manage Alligator Creek. And then ongoing maintenance will be required along with the cost share of the Alligator Creek owners for the downstream uses. And understand that maintenance is an ongoing feature of any project that you construct. So anytime we see an application for capital improvement, always keep in mind in the background there's going to be some long-term maintenance. We try to design it properly so that it's long-term and requires minimal maintenance, but every project requires maintenance over time. And of course, that's it. Boaters, welcome to Punta Gorda and Charlotte Harbor. And this is sponsored by the Punta Gorda Boaters Alliance. And again, my name is Hans Wilson. If you have any questions, I'll be available.
Thank you. Thank you, Hans. The community group of individuals in our community who really have worked to push this project forward and have hired Hans Wilson and his associates, they have done a great deal of work. I mean, I think it's obvious from Hans's presentation. And I do want to thank them and to thank Hans for all their efforts. Our city manager now will provide the identification, a little bit more detail of those properties that are affected. Howard?
Hans did a good job estimating the number of units, as he called them, units. Next slide. Here's what's in the proposed assessment area. Existing, there are 1,740 units, and you see them between single-family homes and condominiums and 4 multifamily units. At build-out, the proposed assessment area could have another 1,095 units. Now, that's at build-out, and that's an estimate. Some of those properties may not develop to their potential. But as you can see, single-family parcel, which can be divided up into a number of single-family units, and multifamily. So potentially, at build-out, that assessment area will have close to over 2,800 units, potentially at build-out. That's what we're talking about right now. If the people in that affected area, the property owners, are willing to pay, which is still undetermined, but if they are, we then have to develop an assessment methodology regarding how we're going to be treating these properties.
Thank you, Howard. At this time, we will be welcoming citizen input. And just to be very clear, we as your council members are here this evening to listen. We will not be responding in terms of answering any questions. Obviously, I think Hans brought forth all the detail and the number of questions that still need to be resolved. But we welcome you, we welcome to listen to what you have to say. Again, we would ask you to sign in. There are booklets on those tables near the microphones. State your full name for the record and whether you are here on behalf of an organization. And again, we will ask you to limit your comments to 3 minutes. We will be timing each person. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, full name is Richard Arthur Braun. Address is 741 Long Beach Court in Charlotte Park Civic Associations.
Are you speaking on behalf of your organization, sir?
No,
Thank you.
I'm just a member of the organization.
Thank you.
My major question is, has anyone asked the current residents who utilize Alligator Creek whether they are in favor of this cut through? Because it's going to add, as Howard just stated, at build-out, approximately 2,800 additional boats that could be utilizing that cut-through. And we've already got, all the way from Burnstore Road, with the 3 mobile home parks that are there, we have Burnstore Isles, we have Windmill Village, we have all of the Venice Waterway that is currently using that, and it's going to create a huge additional influx of boating traffic at the mouth of Alligator Creek.
Thank you,
And
sir.
I think that all of those residents should be included somehow in the decision-making, whether this even proceeds. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Did you sign in, sir? Excuse me. Richard? Richard, did you sign in? Yes, I did. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Doug Reese. I'm the president of the Burnt Store Isles Association and the vice chairman of the Canal Advisory Committee for Burnt Store Isles. Many of our residents have contacted me with concerns about the volume of water, the tidal flow, if there will be differences or discrepancies from what we now experience. And then the other issue that is constantly brought up is how busy Alligator Creek is from exactly the area you're talking about creating the canal to the outlet at markers 1 and 2. These are serious considerations that I notice Hans made no comments about anything other than the community he's working with. He made no comments whatsoever about the effects it may have on the rest of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Todd Rayson. I live on Osprey Drive. I am against this
Excuse me.
proposal.
Excuse me. Who's speaking right now? You are, sir. Okay.
I signed in.
Thank you. Your
I'm
name
against
again?
this. I'm against this proposal due to the fact I will never use it. I think a more fair way would be to do it like they do on parkways and turnpikes. You get an electronic sticker, you put it on your boat, you go through, good. You don't have it, you pay a fine. This way, the people that don't want this, like me, don't have to pay for something they are not going to use. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We're going to go back and forth, okay? So now your turn, sir.
My name is Ted Goodwin. I live on Partridge Drive. I have attended the meeting at the Isles Yacht Club and obviously tonight. It appears to me that the planning of the apportionment of the dollars seems to be done in a rather primitive manner. The bottom line is that there are other stakeholders who will use the canal, the dredging companies, the sheriff's department, the city, people that live up near Ponce Inlet will benefit on a second-tier level by reducing the amount of traffic going in and out of Ponce. And taken as a whole, benefit basically to all of PGI will accrue in some way, shape, or form. To us in the bird section, it will accrue maybe more. If we can get out, obviously this is predicated on getting the permitting and effectively keeping Alligator Creek dredged to an appropriate level. I've come in and out of there twice in the last 5 weeks in my fishing boat, and there are 2 swales at 3.5 feet above low tide. Well, you know, that's got to be kept open. That's inviolate. But you need to think about a larger group of people who will benefit, and maybe you do a tiered system of assessment. Like I say, but this seems a little like surgery with an axe.
Thank you, sir. All right, to my right.
My name's Chuck Milberg from 236 Venezia Court. My question is, or I'd like clarification. I understand and I've heard that the land encompassing the cut as well as the 4.4 acres to the southwest of it is not capable of being developed now. And if so, the value given to that seems quite high.
Thank you, sir. This side?
Yes, my name is Mark Long, and my wife Leanne and I are permanent residents living in Burnt Store Isles, and we do not support this project. Here are reasons that the project does not benefit our community. Harbor access is a major factor in home pricing. When we were buying, we knew what homes with longer access times were less expensive and considered it thoroughly, balancing time to harbor and home price. We did our homework, weighing the boat traffic on Alligator Creek as well. This project will benefit a very small percentage of the community for their boating convenience and their home values, not for the community as a whole. This project does not benefit the entire boating community, just a select few boaters. It will, however, be detrimental to the boaters and fishermen who access the harbor via Alligator Creek. Will those who are negatively impacted be compensated? There is a discussion of 1,500 residents, that's updated now, paying for the project. Does that include city staff time? The rental of this room tonight? As a taxpayer, I believe our tax money should be spent benefiting our community as a whole. We previously emailed a letter to the City Council and Boaters Alliance indicating that as this project is not representing the greater boating community, the Alliance should recuse themselves from this project. They are representing a very select few of the boating community. In the State of the City 2015 report, this project was not listed as an economic opportunity. There are claims it will increase tax rolls. We disagree and are very concerned that the added congestion on Alligator Creek will have a detrimental financial impact on properties whose only harbor access is Alligator Creek. Again, will there be any compensation for those impacted residents? This situation will only be magnified as more waterfront properties are developed along Alligator Creek, not just PGI. The most important environmental point is that environmental habitat will be destroyed. Mitigated sounds like a nice word, but the fact is habitat will be destroyed, disappear forever. So a select few can get to the harbor faster. The city proudly displays their relationship with the Charlotte Harbor National Estuary Program. We hope that the unnecessary destruction of more natural habitat is not acceptable to this council. One final note, I'd just like to point out that safe harbor does not mean at your dock. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me.
Sir?
Sir, do you represent a particular group?
Myself and my wife.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
I represent myself. My name is Gary Lipes, and along with my wife, we reside on the property that adjoins the land proposed for creating bird paths to connect Alligator Creek to Perimeter Canal of PGI. We've lived here for 15 years. We don't object to the concept of bird paths, but we do have several concerns regarding the positioning of the paths in regards to our property. First concern, we have 85 feet of shoreline at the southwest end of our property that has no riprap. The DEP refused to permit riprap at that point. Without a mangrove barrier between our property line and the bird paths, our shoreline will be subject to heavy soil erosion from large boat waves and waves from high wind storms. My second concern, we would be losing a lot of the privacy at the end of our property, which is one reason that we moved there and developed the property to start with. Our third concern, the plan as proposed will lead to boaters missing the pass entrance and running aground in our shallow lagoon right at the end of the property. There's an easy solution, for me anyway, is to ask the firm of Hans Wilson Associates to move the pass 30 to 40 feet to the southwest off our property line, thus creating a mangrove buffer. Approximately the same amount of mangroves would be removed and the distance of the pass the same. This would be a well-defined and scenic pass when finished. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Guertin Thompson. I've resided in Punta, Gorda for retirement for 28 years. I don't represent any organization, only myself.
Yes, sir.
And all I want to bring to the attention, not argument, but the attention, when you see an opening like this, the people that are coming through that opening have many, many boats. Alligator Creek, due to the economic conditions in the last 10 years, you see all the empty lifts up near 41 on Alligator Creek entrance. They're going to be filled up because I believe that the economics is going to get much greater and people are going to get more money to purchase boats. So therefore, not only will we have the people who already have the money and have the boats, we're going to have an extra 1,000 boats coming down there. Secondly, if this cut goes through, they're going to want to do Alligator Creek like they've been wanting to do for all the time I've been here, 28 years, to deepen it and so forth, and the people in there will want to get it opened up. There you're going to have more. So what you're going to end up with is Times Square, right down at the end of the creek there, where it's shallower is all the devil. And I'm just putting my 2 cents in, and everybody can add it up, and you'll find out it's going to cost a lot of dollars and time trying to get in and out of that outlet if these boaters are allowed to come in from another area. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Carolyn, she just wants to make sure that...
Good evening. My name's Kip Carter.
Excuse-
I'm a
excuse me.
resident.
Excuse me, Kim, did you sign in?
I did.
Thank you. We just want to make sure everyone is signing in. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm a resident of the Bird section. I live on Redbird Court. I'm a staunch supporter of this program. I do encourage the council to get on board with this. I'd like to ask a few questions for clarification. I understand you're not responding. First question. At the March 3rd meeting, in which the city manager described the need for a majority of the affected homeowners to support the cut, both as desirable and financially, what constitutes a majority vote? Over 50% of the affected homeowners? Over 50% of the returned vote? Or some other measure? As you know, 50% of the population did not elect you to your position, so it's some subset. Further, my question is related to the process described by the city manager at the March 3rd meeting, which described the need for the homeowners to study, achieve agency approvals, achieve homeowner majority support, and homeowner support for funding before the commissioners would support the project. My question now has 2 parts. Could you please identify 1 or 2 recent capital projects which used this same process and which were successfully implemented where the project was funded by the affected homeowners? In the case of the improved drainage project in the historic section, or say a hypothetical additional future fire station, was this process required or would it be required? And would or did the directly affected homeowners fund the project? If not, please describe the difference as related to the process required for the cut. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm Bob Stevens. I don't represent anybody but myself and my wife. We've been residents here for about 10 years. We bought our place just before Charlie. As we look at this issue, we consider ourselves to be affected, even though we're not in this zone. And that's because when we bought our house, it was made very clear to us from the start by our realtor that we had to pay extra to be able to get out into the harbor quickly. And it was a big deal to have 15 minutes out. We looked at a number of houses in the bird section, and they were great. They were newer, they were bigger, they had bigger lots, they were larger. We paid $50,000 more to get a smaller, older house so that we could have 15 minutes to get out, because we didn't want to have 45 minutes to get out. That was important to us. That was a choice we made. The people who bought in the bird section made a different choice. And now to have the city consider changing the whole game and setting it up so that now all those folks have 15 minutes out, and the premium we paid on our house is now not worth anything is really offensive to me. And I think there's a number of people that are going to be affected in this manner.
You okay?
Order, please. Sorry, sir.
I don't know how you get around that. It seems to me as a city council, you got to look out for everybody. If this cut were put in tomorrow, the way real estate is valued here would change tremendously overnight. A lot of people would get a lot more money for their houses because they're in the bird section and now they'd have a 15-minute out. People like me would get less. And for that reason, I'm absolutely opposed to this. And I haven't heard any comment on it. I haven't heard any discussion or analysis of that. I don't know if Mr. Wilson looked at that as an engineer. I suspect he did not. But I think it's a real problem.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is John Four, and I live in Burnt Store Isles, and I'm here representing myself and my wife. Like the previous gentleman, we bought our house knowing how deep the water was behind our house and whether we could get in or out. I am now deeply concerned, what impact will this cut, this removing this 5-foot plug of land, have on the water flows? I hear that their water flow is going to be better. Well, if theirs is better, does that mean mine might be worse? So, some expert here has answered me. So, but anyways, so that's really one of my questions. Two, I have listened as methods were proposed to skirt regulatory requirements. I don't know why the mayor or anybody else would want to be involved in a project that is knowingly up front, oh, we're going to do it this way, that way we don't have to do this. We're going to do, you know, it seems to me you're assuming risk and liability for the city that us, as residents that pay taxes, may not want to participate in. Okay, three. When I counted the homes in Burnt Store Isles and in Charlotte Park, there's a lot of homes there, a lot of lots. What's going to be the negative effect on those people and on those lots as a result of this? Now, and it's been mentioned already, I go up and down Alligator Creek in my sailboat. It is very tight. You have boats coming out of that cut. There's already a shoal there. I've come the whole way down from above Baltimore, and every time you have two cuts come together, there's big shoals. And it's about impossible for the Coast Guard and everybody else to keep them clean. Is somebody going to dedicate themselves to keeping that cleared out? And also doing traffic control down there. I mean, who knows the rules on, all right, you have a boat coming from your starboard and you have one to your port, who has the right of way? As I said, it's crowded right now. Now,
Ladies and gentlemen, please give everyone their opportunity. Thank you, sir.
I think you got the idea.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. My name is Harvey Goldberg. I'm a resident of Punta, Gorda, and I do live in the bird section. I have signed in. I'm on the fence as to where I personally feel about this project. Having been on the city council for 6 years and the mayor for 2 years, I've heard a lot of these stories. I would congratulate Mr. Wilson on presenting the information he has is much further along with a great deal more detail than we've had in the past. There was one of the slides that Mr. Wilson put up that particularly folks in the back could not see, but he commented on land acquisition. That means what it would cost to buy 175 feet of otherwise worthless marshland. And the price on that slide is $400,000. And that's just a starting price. I understand that, and I've seen that in the past. That's just a starting price. We should be outraged, whether you're for that project or against the project. We should be outraged for the opportunistic approach being taken by the landowner to demand $400,000 or more for 175 feet of worthless marshland. And I would hope and expect the city council, if they took this project on, to work on that. If this project and everything is good for the city, that land should be donated for the benefit and the public interest of everyone in Punta Gorda. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Richard Brewer, and I'm speaking for just myself and my wife, Ruth. We live on Suzie Street, and I guess the primary thing that caught my attention when I heard of this proposal was the safety feature. We've lived and boated from Punta Gorda since 1995, all over Florida and the Bahamas, and the worst storm we ever were in, we would have made it into safe harbor if we could have gotten in through Alligator Creek rather than ponds. It did a lot of damage to rigging and boating, so I support it wholeheartedly from a safety standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Richard Collins, and I live in the unaffected area of PG Last year, I was the Commodore of the PG Islanders. I was asked by the Boaters Alliance to allow them to come in and make a presentation. But then I got to thinking about it, and I thought, our club is a member of the Boaters Alliance, but we never approved or disapproved. We took no stand on the project. And it seems to me to be, I'll be honest, this seems unethical for an organization to be strongly promoting a project of which its members were never asked for support. I don't think any of the members were asked. I only know about ours. But I think about the land thing we just heard about. Why can't the city just use the power of eminent domain and just take the land? Question.
There you go.
Right? I'm personally not, even though I'm in the unaffected area, quote unquote, I'm not objecting to the cut, neither or favoring one or the other. The other thing is, I agree with one of the very first speakers. Maybe it could be paid for by the people who actually use it by using a sticker like the Sun Pass. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Robert Brown. I live on 1421 Grebe Drive. We've got a packet here which I actually signed my name to. Could I give that to you, please?
You can.
All right, thank you.
Actually, why don't you give it to our city clerk? Are you finished, sir? It's part of your 3 minutes.
I gave that to you so I could have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, I'm opposed to this, and I'm opposed to this because I have a sailboat that draws 5 feet 4 inches. According to the mean low water for Ponce de Leon Inlet, it's supposed to be 6 feet mean low water, taking into account the phases of the moon and northern winds, which I realize makes it more shallow. Now, I don't find any safety issues at all going through that. I've been going through it for 7 years, and I have a 48-foot sailboat, so it's not small. And I have over 150,000 miles sailing out in the ocean. And one thing that you don't do in a storm is try to make a shoal draft inlet. That's looking for disaster. You should take some other options other than that. So I just wanted to comment on that. But what I had to say here, I've talked with Mr. Disher about this, and he does the canal maintenance for all the seawalls and a number of inlets. And for him to stretch his resources and then keep this at 6 feet mean low water so people such as myself can get out, I don't think he can do it. And I know Alligator Creek is impossible for me to get into, and that's why specifically why I bought in Punta Gorda Isles and not in Burnt Store Isles, because I physically cannot get in there. And I took the bird section, like the other gentleman was talking, he paid extra money to go to ponds. I didn't want to be near ponds. I wanted to be back up in the bird section, which protects me from the hurricanes and a number of other reasons for that. I have 40 minutes to get out. I don't use my boat all the time, just like the majority of the people in this room. They do not use their boat all the time. It's a nice selling point for the realtors, but I don't think it's very realistic. And my final thought is this. I found out about this by word of mouth, and I'm the opposition, obviously, here for this group that's in here. You should at least use the tax rolls to get hold of everybody through a referendum so that we can all vote on this, because you have no trouble finding us when it's tax time, so you should have no trouble finding us for this referendum.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. And you did it all within 3 minutes. Yes, sir.
My name is Dane Shearer, and I also am opposed to this for all the reasons that have been stated. I paid a premium. Alligator Creek is already way too crowded, and it's going to get more crowded. But the reason I'm here, and I'm sorry I'm not more prepared, I was out on my jet ski and found a beautiful canal that I was told was used to build PGI, and that was blocked off later on. It's in between Alligator Creek and Ponce de Leon, and you cannot get to it if it's low tide. You can forget that. But once you get into this little channel, it's unbelievably wide, very deep, and there's only about 20 feet that has been used, I think, to block it off from the harbor. And if that were excavated, you've got a straight path right into the bird area. Again, it's in between Ponce de Leon and Alligator Creek. It's a beautiful wide canal used for construction. It's been blocked off, could be easily opened up. I'd like to bring that up as an option for taking a path over to Alligator Creek. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is William Short. I live in the bird section. I don't represent anybody but myself and my wife. We currently don't have a boat. We currently would love to see this project go through. If we choose not to buy a boat in the future, I'm sure the person that will purchase my house when I'm gone would like to have the option of getting through. As far as the comments about someone buying a house at a premium price to get out, yes, they did, and for the entire time that they've owned that property, they've had that benefit. They've been able to get in and out. I'd like to use the quote, a rising tide raises all boats. It certainly is not going to devalue your property value if you're already close to the harbor. If it happens to increase mine, so be it. I didn't buy the property as an investment. I bought it because I love the area. I love being on the water. This is my only shot ever of being on the water, and I just wouldn't have it any other way. I'd also like to add that I currently hold a 100-ton captain's license, professional mariner, and from a professional mariner's standpoint, there is absolutely no negative to this project whatsoever. We can only go by what the studies have told us. I can't stand here and say if they've proposed 6 feet, that it'll never be 6 feet. I have to go, if they're telling me it's 6, I'm going to trust them to be 6. I just hope, put my faith in the professionals that are looking at this project, and that's my 2 cents.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Dale Tower, and I represent me and my wife, Janet. We bought here about 9 years ago, understanding that it was a boating community. That's why we came to this town. I hear a lot of negativity here from other people who won't be affected, won't be paying for it, concerned about traffic. We've never had a problem with traffic going out of Ponce entrance. And as far as rules of the road, slow down, pass at a safe speed. As voters, we all seem to get along that way. I think this is a great project. I think it'll benefit the community. Your taxes will go up. The city will benefit from the increased taxes. I'm not sure why we're going through this process tonight, because I've seen a lot of bike paths go in this city to the tune of over several million. I've seen parking ramps go in. In the future, they probably all benefit the city. But we never had a meeting like this where we discussed it. And if we are discussing it, shouldn't the discussion go to the people who live in the area that are going to be paying for it, not the people off to the side? Sure, there are going to be some boating traffic, but they're also going to help keep that canal clean, which I think is great. More people paying, the better. But we stand up here and we see all these people come up here. Am I the only person that